Welcome to the Belief Breakthrough Show, where we believe that you can achieve the life you dream of simply through shifting your perspective and breaking through your limiting beliefs. With your host, Tina Encarnacion, the author of Stuck in the Fire, a story of resilience, trauma and abuse coach, an energy healer, and Reiki master. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in again for another amazing episode of the Belief Breakthrough Show. My name is Tina Encarnacion, and I am your host. I am so excited for who we have on today, you guys. She is a phenomenal woman. Her name is Shari. She is an empowerment mentor and coach, and she is about to release her very first book, which I cannot wait to get my hands on. It is called My Skeleton Has Names. You guys, this woman, it is insane how much her story mirrors my story and where we both are at in our lives. And she is going to drop some powerful bombs on you today about taking responsibility for where you are at in your life, about making choices to change rather than accepting what has been handed to you, and what she has done to take her life of trauma and abuse and turn it around to empowerment. So let me introduce you guys to this amazing woman. Shari, please tell us about yourself, what you've been through, and how you have got to where you are at today.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Tina. It's really exciting when we get to connect with people who are sort of our peers in our journey. Okay, so oftentimes when I talk about having a peer in my network, people think, "Oh my gosh, you guys are all the same age, the same, color, the same height." They think of us all being exactly the same. And a peer is really anybody who has similar experiences, and we can learn so much. But it also normalizes us because I grew up feeling like an outsider most of my life, all the way from early childhood into becoming an old lady, right? So, I was in my late 40s when I finally was able to take back my power and get in touch with who I was created to be. And it was after years and years of emotional and physical abuse and homelessness, and mixed with smashing the glass ceiling, right? And when I learned how to play the hand that I was dealt and to take away all shame related to the choices I had made or the situations I was forced into experiencing, and I was able to remove any blame and own it all, I found an incredible sense of freedom. And you and I were chatting before this show because yesterday I was being interviewed about the book that I have coming out. And I was asked, what does it feel like when you have that breakthrough? And my breakthrough was so dramatic. And I'd like to say it was instantaneous, but that's like saying that you were an overnight success, but it took 10 years to get there, right? So the breakthrough, while it feels like it's instantaneous, it was 40 plus years in the making, and it was years of therapy. And it wasn't until I found an empowering coaching program that allowed me to truly have that breakthrough and find that freedom. And the amount of clarity that I derived from that breakthrough created a sense of freedom. It got me back to my sense of self, who I really was created to be, my true self, not who I was trying to be all those years, not who I thought I was supposed to be, but really what in my heart and gut. Because when our hearts and our guts line up, right, then our brains can work normally. But when everything's out of sync, that triangle can't close. And I just looked like a hot mess. Right? I mean, I was just, wherever I went, chaos seemed to follow. And it took that breakthrough for me to find that freedom. So what's that freedom? It's tapping into an endless fountain of joy anytime you want to. And even amidst chaos, instead of being the chaos creator, I no longer bring the tornado. I can calm the storm. And it is a powerful and freeing feeling to know that everything's good. And that doesn't mean perfect, and that doesn't mean an endless source of everything I want. It doesn't mean superfluousness. Oh, I haven't said that word in a long time. It doesn't mean that. It just means you're good right where you are. And whatever you have is enough, including me. So years of not feeling like I was good enough, or that I looked the right way, or I said the right thing, or just not enough, being inadequate even when I was successful. It is really a peaceful feeling. It's a real freeing feeling. And, it's interesting because one of my best friends said to me one day, he goes, Shari, what were the words he used? He says, Shari, he says, I don't think, when's the last time you experienced joy? That's what he asked me. And I had to think about it. And I thought about, what is real joy, right? What does real joy look like? And I couldn't answer the question. And he and I sat and cried. And I said, wow, I don't have any joy in my life. I have 3 wonderful children. I had a marriage. I had a great paying job and a fulfilling job. I was very successful, but I had no joy. And so, joy seemed to be the missing component in everything. And it got shadowed and shoved down by outside voices and inner experiences.
So what have you gone through? Like, give us like a glimpse of what you've gone through to make you feel like you were not enough, to make you feel that like lack of joy in your life. Like, how did you
Right.
discover what joy even was?
So, I think what happens is I talk about it like darkness. I have a lot of darkness in my life. And when you are in the dark, pure dark, if you ever go into a cave and there's no light at all, you literally cannot see. And I used to think that meant pain, but I think it's really darkness. There's a real shadow veil that covers you. And it started from a real young age of not feeling like I belonged in my family. I had this intuitive sense that I didn't belong there. And, a lot of people joke when they're kids and they say, oh, my real parents will come and get me and I'll be a princess but I really had this belief that my father was not my father. And it was a core belief that I had from a very young age. And at 9, my parents actually sent me to psychiatrists because they were sick of hearing it. And springboard many years later at 50, I found out I was right all along. He's not my father. But I learned to turn off that intuition. I learned to not listen to my gut. My barometer got broken. And so that affected me years going forward as well, right? Because I never felt like I was wanted. I never felt like I belonged or fit in. And that led to friends and peers. And at 17, my mother and younger sister moved in with my mother's boyfriend at that time. And they said, good luck. There's no room for you here. And so I was homeless for the first time at 17. And it was forced, right? I was literally kicked to the curb and had to figure it out. And about a year went by and I had found a roommate and I went away. I went back to visit some friends that I had been pulled away from in high school. And while I was gone, my roommate and her friends stole everything I owned, including my clothes and shoes. And I found myself homeless again because I had no money. And at this point, long distance phone calls were an issue. They rang up a $900 long distance AT&T bill. And I said to my mom, I said, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, I don't know what to tell you. You'll know. You'll have to figure it out. Maybe your grandparents from Pennsylvania will take you in. And that rejection that, you can't even come stay with us while you figure this out. Not even a suggestion, well, maybe you should go to college. I had great grades and I was labeled gifted and I have a lot of abilities, but nobody ever suggested college. And out of desperation, I called my mom's parents that lived in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I moved. I took my box of stuff and I was gone. And that was my first suicide attempt. And I got really sick with an unidentified. They told me it was psychosomatic. It turns out it was not. All of this is, I can't fit it into a cliff note with going into details. But I had a serious illness, and while I was there, I realized, you know what, this isn't the life I want to live. I'm going to apply to school. And I applied to Penn State because I was in Pennsylvania at the time, and I got in. And so I put myself through school, and I finished in 3.5 years. And then my life started to do what I thought I was supposed to do. I married the first boy that came along, and he emotionally abused me. Turns out he was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And I got divorced, and I married the same man with a different face. And he called me some pretty horrible names most of our marriage. MFC was one of them. Mother effing, and you can fill in the C word yourself. And that's actually what I thought my name was, right? I mean, it's horrible. And then a neo-Nazi came and shot at my kids while they were in camp on my son's 5th birthday. And I had the most traumatic PTSD, but this was before Columbine even. And this was before, how sad that that I can actually say this is before mass shootings were a thing. This is before, but it was. And we didn't know anything about this. And we walked in with 2 AR rifles, and we didn't know where our kids were for hours. And I was the first civilian on scene. And I learned later that I had severe PTSD from that. And it wasn't treated. And my kids also suffered severely. None of us were ever the same after that. And I found myself in a horribly domestic violence situation. My jaw's been broken. I've had bones broken. It's been just terrible. I became a drug addict, put a lot of white powder up my nose, was fired from a job without reason prior to the addiction. And it all just spiraled into really my own little kind of hell. And crawled out of that and found myself in another abusive relationship and found my breakthrough. Okay. So it was, like I say, it's the overnight success that took 40 years.
Yeah. So what was your aha moment, your breakthrough that made you realize I need a shift here? And how did you make that transition?
Yeah.
Was there a point where you're like, I need to take responsibility for this, or how did I get here, or the blame game needs to stop, or what was that? What did that breakthrough look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it really happened the last time that I was being choked. And I felt the air and life being literally choked out of me. And my ex at that point, I had gotten away, I had broken free, but he had broken in. And he grabbed me out of the shower and was choking the life out of me. And I really thought I wanted to die. I really thought, you know what, I'm just not even going to fight anymore. There's nothing worth living for. Everybody will be better. Because when you're suicidal, your thoughts are really it's not about freeing yourself from the pain. We truly have convinced ourselves that the rest of the world will be better without us.
Right.
And it feels very selfless, even though people say it's selfish. And I don't know, all of a sudden I remembered my kids, and I thought, oh my gosh, who's going to take care of those kids? Even though they have fathers and everything else, I've got to live. And somehow I was able to get free, and I realized this. So my daughter started to come into the house, and he ran, and she saved my life. And I realized I can't live this way anymore. Something's got to change. And that's when I decided to get sober. And I didn't know I could get help. I didn't think, and I was embarrassed to let anybody know what was really going on in my life. So I chose to get sober alone. I did it on my own. And I started that search. I started that recovery process from life. And I learned and I found that I truly played a part in everything bad that happened to me.
Mm.
And I took responsibility for it. And I ended the blame game. And when I ended the blame game, things started to lighten up. Light started to come back in. Relationships started to get better and to heal. And I started to understand my part and my role in everything. And people say, so I think, Tina, and I don't know if you've ever had this experience, a lot of people who have been abused, whether it be emotional or physical, we blame the abuser. And so when somebody says, well, what's your part in it? It's very difficult to find one. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm just making dinner. What do you mean, what's my part? I'm going to work. I'm paying my bills. I'm taking care of my children, whatever it may be. But people say, what's your part? What's your role? And it's very difficult to see that you even have one.
Mm.
Very difficult. But when I realized my role was choosing the abuser,
Mm-hmm.
So I chose the situation, even though I didn't think it would be abusive. I chose that situation, and then I chose to stay in it. And so I had to take some responsibility.
Mm. Absolutely.
And it's not as easy as that just sounded. I wish it was that easy, but that's really where it started.
Yeah.
It's really where it started.
And I think that that's really significant to understand, because like you said, when you're in that situation and you go, well, what is my responsibility here? It's so much easier to point the finger. And I think that that's why this world is at the state that it is in right now, because we have been groomed by media to no longer take responsibility for ourselves and our actions. We have been taught that we don't have to be responsible for our role. We can blame it on someone else. And so
Interesting.
that's really significant how you said, I had to understand that I had responsibility in this. And even if it is just perpetuating the cycle that has been handed down to you, that is still that's still your responsibility. You have the choice to break that cycle or continue that cycle. You can do it mindlessly and follow the role that you were told you need to follow, or you can put your foot down and say, I am no longer going to allow this to be handed down to my next generation, right? And so that
Right.
role of responsibility is so extremely important to understand. You're looking at that responsibility and role of your abuser. I've recently understood the role as parent-child. I spent my
Well,
entire
and
life. Yeah,
right.
go ahead.
So no, but well, I mean, I was abused by my parents too. So,
Mhm.
and I have children, and there's a lot of responsibility that we have to take for a lot of things. But, my book subtitle is How I Went from Victim to Hero. And so it's really important that we become our own heroes.
Mm, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's
And you can't do
really
that without
important.
first taking responsibility.
You cannot, and you really have to understand the role shame has played in your life and your decisions to sort of perpetuate the dance or the cycle that we do.
Absolutely.
And it's why I married the same man with a different face 3 times.
Yes.
Okay. I married the same guy, and yeah, he looked different on the outside and the circumstances were different. But as far as the narcissistic and emotional abuse and gaslighting, that was their core personality. And we accept the love we think we deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another one that's really hard one to grab onto is, what do you mean you accept the love you deserve? Like, I deserve everything. Yeah, I know you think that, right? But if you don't understand boundaries and you don't understand healthy interaction, um, because we all just want to be seen, we all just want to be loved, we all just want to be taken care of emotionally. And people with abusive personalities take care of your emotions better than anybody else because it's a scam. Okay. And there's a term today that is used commonly that I had never heard until probably within the last year, and that's called love bombing. And that's exactly what abusers do: is they love bomb you, is they fill every emotional pinhole that you have in your body. And even after the abuse, if they try to make some kind of amends, that amends is phenomenal and it keeps us trapped. And then we layer the shame into, I'm a strong, independent woman or man. I mean, men are abused too, okay? But I'm a strong and independent person. How did I allow this to happen? And then you start the shame. And it does, it becomes a dance and it becomes a cycle. And then that self-talk, oh my gosh, I'm such a loser, right? I did this again. Again, yeah. I can't even believe I did this again. No wonder I failed at my marriage. I fail at everything. And you can start this cycle. Reel, right? It's the cycle. And you're right. It goes back to really what we learn love is, and our parents teach us based on what they knew, right? They didn't take the time to end the abuse to pass it down, right? They didn't know, they didn't have the information.
And that's where I was going to go, is I don't think they knew. I think we know today a lot more about emotions and trauma and how it's handed down than they knew back then. They were just starting to scratch the surface of emotional mind-body connection. I know when my parents were becoming parents, they weren't even open to that realm of possibility. And so it's so easy to blame them and say, you did this to me. I am this way because of you. But if you look at it deeper and you realize they were abused the same way they abused you, and that's all they knew, and they didn't realize that it was abuse, and their parents were abused that way, and their parents were abused that way, and it's generational. And epigenetics has now proven that the trauma and abuse is handed down to you through your DNA and your genes, and a traumatic experience that you personally endure actually reignite that dormant gene that then allows you to download that trauma from years and years and centuries of generations before you. And you are now enduring their trauma and emotions and abuse through that gene that's been passed down to you through your DNA.
So it's really interesting. So let me share a little story if we have time. It's a little sidetrack, but it really ties into this. Okay. So I told you I didn't think my father was my father. Okay. And at the age of 50, I found out, because I did, 23andMe, and sure enough, our DNA is not the same. And so through that process, I did find my biological father. And I have 3 half siblings. It's really interesting. My biological father wrote, I think, 32 books on social work for University of Texas.
Wow.
And this is, his whole, he wants nothing to do with me, by the way. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the DNA is broken, because it turns out his father was one of the first people to have a lobotomy.
Wow.
Okay. So you want to talk about traumatic generational stuff. Okay. Now, here's what else I found out. I found out that I was 30% African. Okay. So that would make me biracial. That's enough to make me biracial. It's not 1%. I'm biracial.
Yeah.
Well, finding my biological father and his DNA, I knew that had to come from my mother's side, because he's 100% Eastern European, okay, and had no African in his DNA. So I went to my mom and I said, hey, dude, if I have 30%, that means you have more. Okay, because I didn't get it from my biological father's side. I got that from you. And so she secretly decided, okay, I'll do my DNA and I'll figure out what's going on. Well, for her to have been Black, it meant her father's not her father either, because he's as white as they come.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So this is where I'm like, this is really gonna tie in for you. Okay. So sure enough, it turns out she does her ancestral tracing, and her father wasn't her father either. Now, neither of her parents are alive, and nobody else is alive to really tell us what happened. right? What's the story? We think it happened during the war, the Korean War, when my grandfather was away. We don't know. We'll never know. But my mother's father's Black. Mm. And she's been able to trace the genealogy. She's met some of the cousins, and there were slaves and there were Buffalo Soldiers. So if you want to talk about generational trauma, right? Here I sit and I have these two genetically traumatic backgrounds come together in me. And so any kind of trauma triggers that could have ignited that dormant gene, or I don't know enough about it. Okay. But I was pre-wired to be exactly the way I am. I was pre-wired to accept things because the generations before had been that way. And, we always say, well, look at some of these parents. If you look at my dad who raised me's parents, they were emotionally unavailable for everybody. I mean, they were, so the fact that he's emotionally unavailable and doesn't show a lot makes sense. I mean, so he was raised in the same way. So if you take these three pots and put them all together, right, they're gonna affect us. And while my children are young adults now, I do believe, and we talk about it often, that my change, the ability that I have had to change and make a difference in me, is making a big difference in them right now as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
you break the chain.
Steps. Well, but they're taking steps. Okay, they're taking steps to fix things. My daughter is in a horribly emotional, abusive relationship, and she has almost to the T repeated my choices with men that way. And her father, if you remember, was a narcissist. That's where I learned the term narcissistic personality disorder. So it's not a surprise.
Right.
That we would have passed these things to her that would have created her to be a trauma attractor. she a trauma creator. And so she is also now taking responsibility to heal herself so she can end the cycle there, because I couldn't end it in time. I didn't know.
Yeah. And but she wouldn't have known to end it if you hadn't planted that seed and started doing it yourself. Right. So by you breaking that chain, you're teaching the next generation how to change and heal. And so you began that seed of healing, and they will take it deeper and further than you ever did. And eventually that pain and trauma will be taken out of your lineage. And so not only are you healing below, but you're healing above. And I think that that's so important to understand that term, breaking the chain, and what does that really look like? Because you not only now are healing yourself in your lineage, but you're taking it a step further, and you're sharing your story through your book, My Skeletons Have Names, and you're physically changing other lives and other families by stepping forward, being vulnerable and raw, and saying you too can change. That's the whole concept of this show, is to not just heal my lineage, but to help open up the door of possibility for others to heal, right? And so your story is so powerful, and what you're doing is so powerful. And I would love for you to share, before we leave, what you've just discovered about you creating the foundation that is going to change millions of lives in this world. I know it's not completely developed yet, but please share with us what you're doing.
You're giving away my trade secrets.
Sorry. I'm excited.
So when I was 17 and homeless, it was really traumatic to me because there was no place for me to go. I wasn't a drug addict. I wasn't an alcoholic. I wasn't a battered child. I was just an ordinary middle-class girl with issues, right? Or as my mom would say, I had subscriptions. I had so many issues, they had turned into subscriptions. And there was literally no place to go for help. And as I got older, I'd always dreamed that I would be able to create a place for help for people like me. And the older I get, I'll be 55. My double nickel birthday is coming up in August. So this is a really pivotal year for me. Um, and, things happen when they happen. But I've never given up that dream. But that dream was unlocked again when I had my breakthrough. The weekend I had my breakthrough, I know wholeheartedly, I said it to my best friend. I said, I am going to do this. It's taken me 7 years, but I am going to do this. And I am going to create a foundation for people in transition that have found themselves displaced due to circumstances beyond their control, and to help them get the healing and the advocacy they need to step into life, into their shoes, live out loud, live brave, and really be who they were created to be, so they can find joy and pass it on to others.
That's so beautiful. I'm so excited for your foundation. You have no clue. I'm just like,
I
oh.
might have a little clue. I might have a
Right?
little clue, because
You
it's
might.
really needed. It's really needed. And I've done the research, and there's nothing like it.
There's not. It's going to be powerful and life changing, and you're going to heal so many families and break so many cycles. It's going to be awesome. Well, Shari,
Break
I
the
just have to
chain,
say,
baby.
break the chain. I have to say thank you so much for coming onto the show and sharing your experiences with us and dropping all of the amazing nuggets that you have dropped on our show today. I'm so grateful. If someone wants to work with you, how can they find you?
I'm sure. So sharilueck.com is my website. It's SHARILUECK.com. And that's where I have all the information for my book that's coming out. It'll be available in paperback and on Kindle, and all kinds of other free little nuggets and tidbits to download there. And I do a lot of free help as well, because money shouldn't be the reason why people can't heal.
Absolutely. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Belief Breakthrough Show. Yes, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so now so you don't miss any more amazing episodes. We go live every Monday and Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And if you want to join a group of like-minded individuals that are working on healing their lives and breaking the ancestral chains of despair, please join our free Facebook group at Women Empowered to Heal. Again, that is our free Facebook group, Women Empowered to Heal, where you will be fully supported with no judgment or comparison, where you can blossom into the person and individual that you are meant to be. We will see you on the next episode. Thank you for joining in.